The relentless Pacific Northwest, rain drums a steady, somber rhythm against the window pane of Elias Croft's secluded A-frame cabin. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of old paper, damp wool, and wood smoke from a struggling fire in the stone hearth. The cabin is a physical manifestation of Elias' own mind, cluttered with the ghosts of old cases, shelves bowed under the weight of forgotten law books, and a layer of dust settling over a lifetime of regrets. He sits in a worn leather armchair, its creases and scars mirroring the lines on his own face, staring into the flickering flames as if they might offer an answer to a question he stopped asking years ago. His large, calloused hands cradle a chipped ceramic mug of black coffee, the heat a small, focused pain to ground him, to keep the more diffuse, haunting pain of memory at bay. A sudden, sharp knock at the heavy wooden door cuts through the monotonous symphony of the rain. The sound is so foreign, so utterly out of place in his self-imposed exile that Elias freezes, his entire body going rigid. His knuckles whiten around the mug. No one comes out here. Not since he retreated from the world, from the pitying looks and the whispered accusations that followed him out of the city. The knock comes again, more insistent this time, a staccato beat of urgency against the weathered pine. He sets the mug down with a deliberate slowness that belies the sudden, frantic racing of his heart, a drumbeat of dread and something else, something he hasn't felt in years, a flicker of grim curiosity. He rises, his joints protesting with a stiffness that feels more emotional than physical, and crosses the shadow-filled room. He doesn't open the door immediately, instead placing a hand flat against its cold, rough surface, peering through the slender, dusty peephole. Standing on his porch, drenched and shivering, is Sheriff Maya Lin. The sight of her is a jolt. Her usually impeccable uniform is plastered to her frame by the downpour, her dark hair escaping its tight bun in wet tendrils across her forehead. Her face, normally a mask of composed authority, is pale, etched with a deep, unmistakable anxiety that reaches into her dark, worried eyes. She holds herself tightly, arms crossed, as if trying to physically hold her composure together against the storm and whatever else has brought her to his doorstep. With a resigned sigh that seems to come from the very depths of his soul, Elias unlatches the heavy bolt and pulls the door open. A gust of wind-driven rain sweeps into the cabin, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine. "Sheriff Lin," he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble unused to conversation. "To what do I owe this intrusion?" "Elias," she begins, her voice tighter than he remembers, strained with a tension that the rain cannot wash away. "I need your help. It's Arthur Pembleton. He's gone." "Arthur?" "The historian. The man probably just got lost in the archives, Lin. He's done it before." He tries to sound dismissive, but a cold knot begins to tighten in his stomach. "It's been 3 days, Elias," Maya replies, her voice dropping to a near whisper, forcing him to lean in slightly to hear her over the rain. 3 days. His cat was yowling unfed on his porch. His tea kettle was still warm when I found it, but he was gone. And he left something behind, Elias. Something deliberate." She reaches into the inside pocket of her sodden jacket, her movements careful, and retrieves a plastic evidence bag. Inside is a single yellowed page, covered in a frantic, spidery script. It was on his desk, weighted down by a rock. It's a page from a journal that isn't in the official town records. It mentions a name. Lillian Graves. Lillian Graves. The name is a ghost, a whisper from the town's past, from a case file he'd stumbled upon years ago and then buried, just like he'd buried everything else. The official report, a scant few pages, called it a tragic accident, a drowning 40 years ago. But the name, spoken aloud in this context, in this storm, feels like a key turning in a long-locked door. He doesn't move, doesn't speak for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the plastic-bagged page in her hand. The fire crackles, the rain hammers the roof, and the silence between them stretches, thick and heavy. "Lillian Graves," he finally repeats, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. Why would Arthur be digging that up? And why would it make him disappear? "I'm the sheriff, but I'm also an..." Elias Croft's entire world narrows to the name, a ghost given voice. Lillian Graves. The two words hang in the damp, smoky air of the cabin, a spectral presence that seems to suck the warmth from the room. The knot in his stomach pulls taut, a familiar anchor of dread he thought he'd cut loose years ago. He can feel the weight of Maya Lin's desperate, hopeful gaze upon him, a physical pressure. He wants to shut the door, to retreat back into the comfortable, dusty silence of his exile, to let the rain wash this intrusion away. But the name is a hook, set deep, and he knows with a weary, sinking certainty that he is already caught. "You should come in," he grates out, his voice even rougher than before. He steps back from the doorway, a reluctant concession, allowing the storm and the sheriff entry into his sanctuary. Maya moves past him, her wet boots leaving dark, glistening prints on the worn wooden floorboards. She stands awkwardly in the center of the room, shivering slightly, her eyes scanning the chaotic landscape of his life. The towers of books, the faded maps pinned to the walls with rusty thumbtacks, the empty coffee mugs and ashtrays filled with the skeletons of dead pens. It is the lair of a man who has given up, and the sight of it seems to amplify her own anxiety. Elias closes the door, muffling the roar of the storm to a persistent background whisper. He doesn't offer her a towel or a seat. This is not a social call. "Let me see it," he commands, his tone leaving no room for pleasantries. He holds out a hand, his fingers, though calloused, betraying a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. Maya hesitates for only a second, her protective law enforcement instincts warring with her need for his specific, tarnished expertise. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she places the cold, plastic evidence bag into his open palm. Her fingers are icy where they briefly brush against his skin. Elias turns and carries the page over to a cluttered desk shoved beneath the room's only window, clearing a space with a rough sweep of his arm that sends a cascade of papers fluttering to the floor. He flicks on a heavy, green-glass banker's lamp, and a pool of warm, yellow light illuminates the page, making the old paper seem to glow from within. The script is indeed spidery, frantic, a chaotic scrawl of black ink that races across the yellowed page, as if the writer's hand could barely keep pace with their thoughts. It's Arthur Pembleton's handwriting, but amplified, charged with a panic Elias had never known the meticulous historian to possess. He leans in close, the scent of old paper and dust filling his nostrils. He reads aloud, his voice a low, gravelly murmur that seems to give weight and substance to the spectral words. October 12th. Found it. Tucked behind a false back in the old ledger cabinet, a space no bigger than a bread box. A journal. Eliza Holloway, S. She saw everything. They said it was an accident, a tragic drowning. A lie. A beautiful, terrible lie to protect the golden boys of this town. Lillian didn't just fall into the river. She was put there. It was a ritual, she writes. A test by the Founders' Circle. It went wrong. The water was so cold that night. Eliza was too frightened to speak then, her family standing at stake. But she wrote it all down. She names them. All of them. The Hargraves. The Blackwoods. The Caldwells. The names that built this town are the names that buried the truth. What have I done? What do I do with this? This secret is a live wire. I can feel its current in the air. They will know I have it. They will know. Elias falls silent. The only sounds are the spit and crackle of the dying fire and the relentless percussion of the rain on the roof. The names from the page seem to echo in the cramped space, expanding to fill every corner. Hargrave, Blackwood, Caldwell. These are not just names, they are the bedrock of Cedar Hollow. They are the money that built the library, the influence that keeps the town picturesque, the legacy that hangs over every civic decision like an ancient, unassailable crown. Maya hugs herself tighter, her arms wrapped around her torso as if to ward off a sudden, profound chill. The Founders' Circle. That's just a historical society. A charity board. My own uncle is a member. They host the summer festival, for God's sake. His eyes are fixed on the page, but he is no longer seeing it. He is seeing a different file, one from his first year hiding in Cedar Hollow, a thin, unsatisfying manila folder from a basement storage box. A coroner's report on Lillian Graves. Death by misadventure. A few witness statements, all from members of those same powerful families. The pieces separated by 40 years of deliberate silence, now slammed together in Elias' mind with the brutal, final force of a vault door locking shut. He can feel the blood draining from his face, a cold numbness spreading outwards from his core. The thin, unsatisfying manila folder from the town's basement, the coroner's report that felt more like a polite fiction than a medical document, the uniformly bland statements from the Hargrave and Blackwood children. It was all a facade, a beautiful, painted screen hiding a festering wound at the heart of Cedar Hollow. A charity board, Elias echoes, his voice a hollow, mocking rasp that makes Maya flinch. He finally turns from the desk, his movements slow and heavy, as if moving through deep water. His eyes, dark and shadowed with the ghosts of two separate pasts now colliding, fix on her. They don't host festivals, Lin. They host cover-ups. And Arthur didn't just find a historical curiosity. He found a signed confession and a list of the guilty. He found a murder weapon made of legacy and influence. This isn't a missing persons case anymore. It's a conspiracy, and we just became its primary targets. The word "we" hangs between them, an unspoken agreement, a partnership forged in the cold fire of this shared, dangerous knowledge. Elias hasn't worked a case, hasn't been a "we" with anyone in 7 long years. The feeling is alien, uncomfortable, but the grim, focused energy now coursing through his veins is terrifyingly familiar. It is the feeling of the hunt. "We need to get to the archives," Maya says, her voice steadier now, fortified by a clear, immediate objective. The fear is still there, a flicker in her dark eyes, but it is being subsumed by a rising tide of professional duty and a fierce, protective anger for her missing friend. If Arthur hid the main journal, it's still there. It's the only thing that can prove this. Before they do, he moves with a sudden, startling purpose, shrugging off the lethargy that has cloaked him for years. He grabs a heavy, wax canvas coat from a peg by the door, its surface still stained with the city grime of another life. He doesn't look like a recluse anymore. He looks like a predator emerging from a long hibernation, his eyes sharp and calculating. "We go now, and we don't use the radio." Maya's sheriff's SUV feels like a fragile metal shell hurtling through a hostile world, the windshield wipers beating a frantic, useless rhythm against the downpour. Elias stares out the passenger window, but he isn't seeing the familiar, rain-slicked road. He is reconstructing the old Graves case in his mind, overlaying Eliza Holloway's frantic words onto the sterile official report, watching the lie dissolve to reveal the ugly, violent truth beneath. A hazing ritual. A test. For the Founders' Circle. Lillian Graves, a pawn in their cruel game, discarded into the cold, dark river. They park a block away from the town hall, its white clock tower a ghostly spire in the gloom. The streets are deserted, washed clean by the storm. They approach on foot, their shoulders hunched against the stinging rain, their footsteps swallowed by the wet asphalt. The side door to the archives is unlocked, a small, chilling confirmation of Maya's earlier, unauthorized entry. The air inside is thick and still, heavy with the profound silence of undisturbed history and the cloying, sweet scent of decaying paper. Maya flicks on her heavy-duty flashlight, its beam cutting a sharp, white path through the oppressive darkness, illuminating floating dust motes like a swarm of startled ghosts. The archive is a labyrinth of towering, metal shelving units crammed with cardboard boxes and leather-bound ledgers, a canyon of paper and secrets. "The ledger cabinet he mentioned," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "It's in the back corner near the old blueprints." The air grows colder the deeper they venture into the maze, the beam of the flashlight dancing over labels faded into illegibility. Finally, they reach an enormous oak cabinet, its dark wood scarred and stained with age. Elias runs his hands along its side, his fingers searching, probing, feeling for the seam Arthur described. His breath catches as his fingertips find it, a hairline crack in the wood, almost invisible. He presses, and with a soft, grating click, a small, narrow panel swings inward, revealing a dark, hidden compartment no bigger than a bread box. It is empty. A cold dread, colder than the archive air, washes over Elias. He reaches in anyway, his hand moving through the void, hoping to find some overlooked corner. His fingers brush against something. Not a journal, but a single, small, metallic object. He pulls it out, holding it under. The beam of Maya's flashlight trembles, casting jittering shadows that dance like taunting specters across the empty compartment. The void inside the false panel is a profound, crushing absence, a physical manifestation of their worst fears realized. Elias' hand, still inside the dark space, closes not around the thick, damning spine of Eliza Holloway's journal, but around the small, cold, metallic object his fingers had brushed against. He withdraws it slowly, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. "It's gone," Maya breathes, the words a puff of vapor in the suddenly frigid air of the archive. The hope that had been a fragile ember within her gutters and dies, extinguished by the sight of that nothingness. They were here. They got it first. He holds the object up to the light. It's a cufflink, old and tarnished silver, engraved with an intricate minimalist design of a pine tree encircled by a ring, the official seal of the Founders' Circle. It winks dully in the stark flashlight beam, a tiny, arrogant trophy left behind in the wake of a theft. "Not just them," he says, his voice low and dangerous. "And not just the journal." He turns the cufflink over, revealing a single, deep scratch marring its surface, a fresh wound on an old artifact. This was a struggle. Arthur must have fought them. He lost the journal, but he left us a calling card. A name. That's the Circle's seal. But which one? Half the powerful men in town have these. He pockets the cufflink, the cold metal a searing brand against his thigh through the fabric of his pants. "We need to get to Arthur's house. Not to find him, they've surely cleared him out. But to find what they missed. There has to be a reason he took that single page, a reason he left it out in the open. It was a beacon. For us." The storm has intensified, the rain now a horizontal, punishing lash against the SUV, as Maya navigates the deserted, gleaming streets toward the older, more genteel part of town where Arthur Pembleton kept his small, cluttered Victorian home. The silence inside the vehicle is no longer just tense. It is thick with the grim understanding that they are walking into a lion's den, that every shadowed window might conceal a watching eye. Arthur's house is dark, a stark silhouette against the bruised, stormy sky. Maya uses her master key, but the door swings open to reveal a scene of devastating, methodical violation. The cozy, book-filled living room has been torn apart. Books lie eviscerated, their spines cracked and pages torn loose, scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Furniture is upended, cushions slashed, their fluffy innards spilling out like pale entrails. The air smells of old paper, spilled ink, and the faint, acrid scent of desperate, hurried violence. "My God," Maya whispers, her hand flying to her mouth. The personal, intimate nature of the destruction is more horrifying than any generic crime scene. This was a message, a brutal erasure of a man and his life's work. Elias, however, moves through the chaos with a predator's focus, his eyes scanning the wreckage not as a tragedy, but as a text to be read. "They were looking for something specific," he narrates, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "They tore the place apart, but look at the bookshelves. They didn't just sweep them clean. They checked individual volumes, then discarded them. They were thorough, but they were in a hurry. This was a search, not just a ransacking." He kneels amidst the debris, his large hands sifting gently through the piles of paper, his touch surprisingly delicate. He knew they were coming, Maya. A man like Arthur, a keeper of secrets, he would have a final redoubt. A place not even they would think to look. It is a large, garishly painted ceramic parrot, a kitschy souvenir from some long-ago vacation, sitting serenely on the mantelpiece amidst the devastation. Its gaudy, unblemished perfection in the heart of such chaos feels like a scream. Elias rises and crosses the room, his boots crunching on broken glass. He reaches for the parrot, its surface cool and smooth beneath his fingertips. He expects it to be fixed in place, but it lifts easily from its perch. It is hollow and surprisingly heavy. He turns it upside down, and taped crudely to the inside of the base is a small, black, waterproof USB drive. He didn't just read. The garish, untouched parrot feels cold and unnervingly smooth in Elias' hands, a stark, artificial island of calm in the storm of destruction that surrounds them. Its painted, unblinking glass eyes seem to stare right through him, a silent guardian of a terrible truth. He turns the hollow ceramic figure upside down, the movement deliberate and reverent, his large, calloused fingers carefully peeling away the strip of gray duct tape that secures the small, black USB drive to the dusty interior. The drive is no bigger than his thumbnail, a sliver of modern technology hidden within a vessel of kitschy nostalgia, a final, desperate act of preservation from a man who understood the weight of the past. He didn't just read the journal, Elias says, his voice a low, awed rumble that seems to vibrate in the oppressive silence of the ransacked room. He holds the tiny drive up, its black plastic casing gleaming like a beetle's shell in the dim, storm-filtered light coming through the broken window. He digitized it. He knew they would come for the physical evidence, so he made a copy. This is Arthur's ghost. This is his testimony. Her face, pale and strained from the relentless tension of the night, now flushes with a fragile, desperate hope. That's it. That's everything. Eliza Holloway's entire account. But we can't look at it here. My cabin isn't safe anymore, and neither is the station. If they were watching the archives, they were watching this house. They might be watching us right now, from the trees across the street, from a car parked down the block. The feeling of unseen eyes upon them is a palpable pressure, a psychic itch between his shoulder blades. The storm outside, which had felt like an ally providing cover, now feels like a curtain behind which anything could be hiding. Where then? Maya asks, her voice tight with a renewed, frantic urgency. We have to see what's on it. We have to know what we're facing. His eyes land on the shattered remains of Arthur's computer monitor, a stark reminder of their enemy's reach. The only place they wouldn't expect, he decides, a grim plan solidifying in his thoughts. Somewhere with no connection to either of us, and no connection to the town's power grid. The old ranger's lookout on Black Ridge. It was decommissioned years ago. No power, no internet, but the structure is sound. We can use my laptop, the battery should hold. Maya wrestles the heavy SUV through the tempest, the vehicle's tires skidding and slipping, its headlights cutting futile swathes through the near-impenetrable gloom of the towering, ancient firs that loom on either side of the narrow track. The wind howls with a feral intensity, shaking the truck on its suspension, a monstrous chorus to their frantic escape. Elias braces himself against the dashboard, his jaw clenched so tight it aches, the tiny USB drive feeling like a live coal burning a hole in the pocket of his wax canvas coat. After an eternity of slow, grinding progress, they reach the small, flat clearing at the summit. The old lookout perch is a skeletal silhouette against the churning, ink-black sky, a wooden tower crowned with a single, glass-walled room that sways precariously in the ferocious wind. They sprint from the truck, battered by the stinging rain, and scramble up the slick wooden steps, their footsteps echoing hollowly and ominously on the weathered planks. Elias forces the rusty lock on the door to the glass-enclosed cab, and they stumble inside, greeted by the musty scent of dry rot, old bird nests, and damp wood. The room is a shivering, exposed cage buffeted by the storm. Wind screams through invisible cracks in the walls, and the entire structure groans and shudders with every powerful gust. Maya sweeps her flashlight around, illuminating dusty surfaces and the ghostly, reflected images of their own terrified faces in the black glass. Elias wastes no time, dropping to his knees and shrugging off his backpack. His hands, though cold and wet, are steady as he extracts his old, ruggedized laptop, its shell scarred from a previous life. He powers it on, the machine's fan whirring in protest, its screen casting a sterile, blue-white glow onto their faces, making them look like apparitions in the dark. With a final, shared look of trepidation, a silent acknowledgement that they are about to tear the veil off their town's soul, Elias inserts the USB drive. It clicks home with a sound. The laptop's fan whirs like a trapped insect, a fragile mechanical heartbeat in the groaning, wind-battered cage of the lookout tower. A window of pure, sterile white appears on the screen, then resolves into a single folder icon, starkly labeled, Holloway Testament. Elias' finger, hovering over the trackpad, feels charged with a static electricity that has nothing to do with the storm. He takes a sharp, bracing breath, the air cold and tasting of dust and decay, and double-clicks. The folder opens to reveal a single, massive PDF file. He clicks it, and the screen floods with a high-resolution scan of aged, yellowed paper, the digital ghost of Eliza Holloway's journal. The same frantic, spidery script from Arthur's page now unfurls in a devastating, multi-page confession. Elias begins to read aloud, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that fights to be heard over the symphony of the gale, giving voice to a secret buried for 4 decades. September 18th. The founders circle gathering at the River Lodge. I was supposed to be in bed, but the laughter drew me. I hid in the old boathouse, watched through a crack in the warped wood. Lillian was there, so bright, so new to town. They called it the Blackwood Baptism. A test of metal, they said, to see if she was Cedar Hollow material. Jonathan Hargrave, so handsome and cruel, dared her to walk the widow's log, the great fallen pine that spans the deepest, most violent part of the river. The storm had swelled it, made it a torrent of black, churning fury. He continues, his words coming faster, laced with a building, cold rage. She was terrified. I could see her hands shaking from here. But they surrounded her, all of them, Jonathan Hargrave, Thomas Blackwood, Richard Caldwell. Their faces, usually so polished and smiling at town meetings, were twisted in a kind of frenzied glee. They pushed her onto the slick, barkless log. She took 1 step, then 2, her arms flailing for balance. The rain was a curtain, the wind a demon's howl. She slipped. Maya has her hand pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide with horrified anticipation, reflecting the laptop's ghostly light. "Keep going," she whispers, her voice trembling. She didn't just fall. She was shivering, gasping, trying to claw her way back onto the log. Jonathan Hargrave leaned down, a mockery of help on his face. He held out a boat hook, the long pole with a cruel metal tip. "Grab on," he shouted, laughing. She reached for it, her fingers brushing the wet wood. And he pulled it back. Not just once. 3 times. A cruel, taunting game. "You have to want it, Lily." He jeered. The current was too strong. On the 4th try, her strength was gone. The black water swallowed her scream whole. One moment she was there, a pale, struggling shape in the maelstrom. The next, nothing. Just the river. It was murder. It was a game. They watched her die. There was no attempt to save her. No panic. I saw their faces in the lightning that followed. Not horror. Fear. Not for her, but for themselves. Thomas Blackwood, always the strategist, was already speaking, his voice low and urgent. "We tell them she was walking alone. A tragic accident. We were inside by the fire. We heard nothing. Our families, our futures, it depends on this." They all nodded. A pact sealed in the rain with a young woman's life. And there the true horror crystallizes. It is no longer just Eliza's script. Below her final, trembling signature, Arthur Pembleton has added his own digital note, a timestamp from the very night of his disappearance. "I have confirmed it all," Arthur's clean, precise typing states, a stark contrast to Eliza's frantic hand. The coroner at the time, Dr. Albright, was deep in debt to the Hargrave family. The official report was a fabrication. The witnesses were all provided by the Circle. But my research has uncovered a more immediate danger. The Circle isn't just protecting their past. They are repeating it. There is a new candidate for town council, A young, idealistic woman named Sarah Chen who opposes their expansion plans. I overheard Jonathan Hargrave, Jr. At the library. He used the same phrase. She could use a Blackwood baptism. A history is.